So welcome to using enumerations, enumerations in Unreal Engine 4. What we're going to be doing by the end of this video is wiring up something which I think is quite nice here in the blueprint. We're going to have all of the colors that we want for various different tank aiming states, reloading, aiming and locked, right here in the designer, and the minimal amount of blueprint we need. And then over in the C++, we're going to create a firing state enum. Now, creating enums is a little different in UE4, we'll see how. And then we're going to use that to in an event-driven way to change the color of the aiming reticule in front of us automatically as the aiming component state changes. So that will be pretty fun. So we talked about the idea that the tank aiming component could be in one of three possible states. Those states are, firstly, we would start in reloading, i.e. the cursor is red, and we're not able to fire right now because the tank has not finished reloading. The moment it's finished reloading, it would go to amber if the barrel's moving, or green if the barrel has stopped moving. So that's one of three possible states. Reloading, aiming, like this, where the barrel is moving, or the final state is locked, which means it's loaded, ready to go, and the barrel has stopped moving. So we've got reloading, aiming, and locked. All right. Now they are three different states that the tank aiming component could be in. How do you encode those sort of states? Well, a meaningful way to encode these states is not using numbers, although behind the scenes it's going to be using numbers. We want to use an enum. Remember, around lecture 35, we used an enum in the bull cow game. We're going to revisit using enums. Now, it's a little bit different in Unreal. If we look at Unreal's coding standards, the way that we did it in the bull cow game, in fact, should we go and look at the way we did it in the bull cow game just for a second? That could be fun, just so we can see our code. I think I'll do it the way that you would be able to do it, which is to go to GitHub and then to go to the Unreal course, so github.com/Unreal course. We go back to bull cow game. We go look, I'll just go look at the final code, I think here. I think it's in fbullcowgame.h. And remember that we did this. Enum class, we made it a strongly typed enum, and we called it eGuessStatus, prefixed with E because it's an Unreal coding standard, and then we had all these different guess statuses. We're going to do something very much like this, but we're going to have three statuses, which, as I said, are going to be reloading, aiming, and locked. All right, but you can't just do this in Unreal. Yes, you'll put your enum class above the main class. So here in tank aiming component.h, yes, it will go in here. Or it could go above here, but I'm going to put it here. In fact, no, I'm not. I'm going to put it above the forward declarations because the forward declarations are, if you like, to do with this class below it. That's where they're used. So I'm going to put my enums here. Enum for aiming state is going to go here. But you can't just put it in just like this because there's two things you need to do that are different. Let's look at the Unreal coding standards. And if you go there to the coding standard, and this link is in your resources for the lecture, and then you look for strongly typed enums, you'll get this. You'll see that the new way of doing things is like this. Very much like we did before, but two changes. Number one, you need to annotate with uenum. This is a preprocessor directive for the Unreal header tool, and it just needs to know that you're declaring an enum here. It's to do with something called the reflection system. We don't need to go into that now. Advanced people have got a link that will tell them a bit more about this uenum type it uses behind the scenes. That's in resources. But for the rest of you, just need to know when you're declaring an enum, you need to put uenum. And the other thing is you need to tell it the underlying data type you want that enum to use. This is presumably for cross-platform independence and perhaps for performance reasons as well. Now, it's using a int8 by standard, which is fine. That's an 8-bit integer, which means between 0 and 255. In other words, you have 256 different possible members you could put in your enum. So that is plenty for us. All right, and then when you want to go ahead and actually use the enum, you, of course, use it in the same way as we did back in the bull cow game. And I'm going to leave that to you as part of the challenge. So I want you to create an enum called eFiringStatus. Use the following pattern, uenum, and then on the next line, enum class, and then eFiringStatus, colon, uint8, use uint8, that's fine for what we are. Remember, of course, you can introduce new lines here, and I encourage you to do so before the curly braces, and then we want, it doesn't matter which order, but locked, aiming, and reloading. I'm going to go in the order reloading, aiming, and locked, because that's kind of the order things happen in. Then I want you to specify those three, which we've just talked about, and then create a private member variable inside the tank aiming component and initialize it to the reloading state. And then don't connect it up in Blueprint, ignore that. So initialize it to the reloading state, and that's it. See if you can write this and get it to compile. So go ahead, pause the video and do that now. Okay, welcome back. Let's see how this works. So here we are, uenum. You've just got to do that first or it won't work. And then what does it say? Enum class thingy. Okay, so enum class e because it's the coding standard, firing state, and then it wants us to specify a uint8. Okay, fantastic. And now we can come into our curly braces and start saying what we want. Well, I want reloading, aiming, and locked. Okay, that I think is the declaration of the enum. We have now firing state as a type. So we can come down here into private and we can say, let's do it here, firing state, actually type is firing state equals, and then you have to qualify it, firing state : reloading. So you have declared a variable, which is a variable of type firing state, which can only take the values of firing state, these guys up here, and we are initializing it to reloading. Let's go ahead and make sure this compiles now. And then I will show you some stuff in Blueprint if it compiles and works. Because we're going to be able to very nicely access that in Blueprint and then allow the designer part of ourselves to assign colors to the different states in Blueprint, which is where you want to be doing it, right? That's where we've got the nice color pickers and all the rest of it. So the compile is complete. If we come into the tank player UI blueprint, now let's just take a step back. Remember that what we did is in the tank player controller, the thing that gels the tank that it's controlling to the player UI, we set this blueprint aiming component reference variable, a blueprint variable. Where is that variable? It's in the player UI blueprint under the My Blueprint tab. And then if you scroll down under variables, you get this BP aiming component reference. Let's get that. If you drag from that now, then, well, you're not going to have actually this firing state. Why not? Full marks if you can tell why. So over here, what we need to do is make this firing state available to the blueprint. There's two things we need to do for that. Firstly, we need to make it a U property, and blueprint read-only seems appropriate. And then we do need to give a category, and I'm going to call it state. That'll be fine. Okay, and in quotes from now on, remember. Now I'm going to move this up. Why am I moving it up? Because it needs to be protected, doesn't it? We are asking to access this property from a subclass. What's the subclass? The subclass is the tank aiming component blueprint. Remember that the parent is the C++ class, so it needs to be in protected. And if you want, you can put that as a comment, and it needs to be a U property. Let's go ahead and recompile. Then what we're hoping to find is that when we come off this BP aiming component, that we will actually be able to find this state. What's it called? It's called firing state. So once the compile is complete, we come off here. We say get firing state. Fantastic. Now what comes out the back of get firing state? It's an enum. Cool. So with an enum, look what we can do. One of the things we can do is select. Let's choose select. So we go from the aiming component. We find the firing state because we've made it a U property. And then we go and find the enum. Look, reloading, aiming, locked. That's all come through. Perfect. Now look what we can do. This is pretty cool. We need to create a color. Now there are lots of ways you can create colors here, but most of them require more than one node. Even the make color doesn't require more than one node, but it does if you want a color picker, right? So the node that I found that allows you to make a color and have a color picker all in one is simply to use the select color node. So search for select color, the American way, no U's in your color. And then what we're going to do is we're going to have 3 of these nodes. So I'm going to use, I think I'm going to use B actually. This Boolean here lets you pick A, but it'll pick B by default. So let's use B for red. Remember to slide this up, which is your value in the HSV, the hue, saturation, and value. This slider is the value. Remember to slide that up. That is red, and then that's what we should use for reloading. So we pick a red. We're not picking A, we're picking B, and that's reloading. Great. Now let's duplicate that and pick the next color down. So duplicate. Going to make this one an amber. Okay. Picking B, and that's going to be the aiming. Okay, and then finally, I'm going to paste this in again. Copy and paste. I use Control-C and Control-V there in this case. I'm going to pick a different color, a green, not too garish, a green, and into locked. So hopefully you can see what's happening there. All of these nodes are picking A, not picking A, they're picking B by default. That's why I'm choosing that, so we don't have to even tick these boxes. We have the firing state enum coming in from the aiming component, And then what we do with the return value, which is now a color, because colors come in, colors go out, it's polymorphic, it can change with the type. Then we do this. It's event driven. We don't really care when this enum changes, but when the enum does change, we want to change the color of the node. Let's compile and see. Now, what did we initialize to in the code? We initialized to reloading. If we look over in the blueprint, we would expect that to be red. So let's see if it is. Let's play the game. We get a crash. That's not super unusual with Unreal. So I'm going to reload. Now, sometimes that's because one of my categories, when I make changes, sometimes that's because one of my categories in a recent bug is not in quotes here. So we will, as we go through, make sure all our categories are in quotes. You're welcome to stop the video and go and do that with all your category equal statements if you like. Restore my assets. See what we've got in the graph. Now, unfortunately, I didn't save, so I'm going to quickly put that back together. Okay, let's try playing the game now that it's fixed. It's red. Perfect. So the final thing, just to check that that is actually coming through from the code, we can't unfortunately just expose it and change it, because if you remember the way, if we go to the tank blueprint, the way that we're doing this is an inherited component, has no details exposed. We're going to fix that soon, but for now, let's just go back to the code for the sake of one short compile, change this state to, I don't know, what do you want? Let's say aiming in the declaration here, and then let's go and recompile the code, and all I'm going to do is just check that that comes through, and that if we have aiming as a default, is aiming one's I set? Yep, aiming. Then when we go through to the blueprint, we look at the color we're setting under aiming, it's amber. Let's see if we end up amber. We do. Perfect. So now we have the ability to change the reticule color based on the state of the tank aiming component. So up next, we're going to give the tank aiming component a little bit more love so that it is doing exactly what we want it to do.